So yeah, it's a spring full of optimism and joy and wonder. I've been immersing myself in non-stop Greek myths and such like, but because it's spring, I think the nymphs, as you can see from the title, actually are a great kind of inspiration and an idea for a video actually. So I won't be, there's too many and they're all obscurely named and what have you, but they are kind of sort of split into categories, and that's how I'll be doing it. A fragrance to represent each category, and well, if you know much about them, they're all kind of what's the word for it, pagan kind of categories. Now a nymph was generally the daughter of a god somewhere. You know, there were sea nymphs from Poseidon, the dodgy, let's call him an offender. Many of them were obviously associated with Zeus the offender, and they kind of hung about with the gods as well. They did work for the gods, they kind of maintained the gods' domain, etc. That's ultimately what they are. They're kind of, generally speaking, associated with gods. And yeah, here we go, let's crack on. So first up, which is quite appropriate as I'm getting next to this river of sewage, is the freshwater nymphs. Now these were called, they all are, depends where you look, doesn't it, but Nades nymphs, and they kind of represented freshwater areas going through forests and meadows and such like. I believe they kind of maintained that area, so you can expect kind of a fresh feel, beauty, all that kind of thing. And what I've gone for that one is really kind of obvious, isn't it? Is Penhaligons Lunar, which to me smells like a, well, more like a mountain spring, but it is somewhere maybe they go. It's got the kind of, it's the juniper that gives it that kind of freshwater spring kind of feel. You know, that water's a little bit heavier, isn't it? And it's got the kind of sweetness of the flowers and the crispness. It's a cool river, isn't it? To me it has a bit of a peachy feel. There's no peach listed, but it has that kind of fresh, joyous thing you want to put your feet in on a hot day and paddle about in. Maybe even take a dip. It's very clean. The flowers, like I say, add that magic and the sweetness to it. It's a gorgeous fragrance, and for me it is one of them fragrances that kind of represents spring to me. So for the Nade, what are they called? The Nades nymphs for freshwater is Penhaligons Lunar. Next is the Anthusi nymphs, which are the nymphs of flowers, which was not an easy fragrance to pick for me, as you can imagine. But yeah, I presume they tended to the flowers, looked after the flowers. I haven't mentioned them, but are they Melissae nymphs, who were the nymphs of honey? So I suppose they were quite connected. A lot of them are connected and kind of would have interacted with each other and that. But obviously flowers are very important. And as we start to get towards spring, we're not there yet, they are important. They're the sign of rebirth and new life, and the sweetness and the joy they bring. And I've gone for probably the most flowery of all the scents I've got, is Nectar of Love from Aromatics. And I've spoken about this song so many times, haven't I? It's basically like a bazillion petals of all these beautiful, gorgeous, sweet flowers. Rose petals, neroli petals, petals of, you know, spring flowers, probably violets, peonies. There are a few listed notes, but you just get this idea of petals and fresh flowers coming through. And they're also, as the name would imply, quite nectary. That sweet dripping, clear syrupiness. It's not a thick syrup, but you know what I mean, like nectar, that kind of thin, runny, beautiful freshness. There's a slight indolic touch, there's the green touch, it's just a magnificent fragrance, and it is like a million flowers have been squeezed into a bottle. It smells heavenly. So yeah, for the flower nymphs, the Anthusi is a Nectar of Love from April Aromatics. Then we have the Nephali nymphs, who I believe are clouds, more specifically rain clouds, but not big heavy black ones, you know, a nice sprinkle, a nice kind of drop, and again working in harmony with the aforementioned nymphs and gods that represent such connected activities. And the one I've gone for, this one is the one I always say is a cloud to me. No, that's not Ariana Grande's cloud. It's Bois d'Argent, which is it silver woods, but the way the iris is in it, it is like a silver cloud, like a rain cloud. There you go. It's soft and it's fluffy, but it's got this kind of shimmer to it. It's really beautiful, and also it always makes you think of it being above an alpine forest or a really green forest, because there's the greenness going through it, that kind of piney feel, if you like, and it's just beautiful, and it's so soft and light, and the iris does the both things there. It is that silver strand, but it also has a bit of the powderiness, a bit of the fluff of the clouds. Again, another one I've spoken about so much, so I'll try not to make this video 70 hours long. So for the kind of silver rain clouds, them nymphs, the Nephali is Bois d'Argent from Dior. Next is for kind of a soft breeze, a gentle breeze, a nice mild breeze, because of course there is a god of wind. I do know. It will come to me, I'll probably pop it on screen, who knows. But yeah, kind of soft breeze nymphs. The Aurore. What I've gone for that is Lunar Dust from Mabelle or Rama. Now I've gone for this for a reason. Now Lunar Dust, as you can imagine by the kind of name of it, makes you think of dust on the moon. It clues in the name. And yeah, it's this again. It's similar to the last one. It's a lot of iris, and kind of soft, clear woods. It's kind of patchouli. It does make you think of the dust, that kind of silver grey dust. It's a little bit fluffy sometimes as well. More clean and nice, and the musks give it that kind of almost a breezy kind of feel to it with the iris, and it does make you think of like a soft wind. I mean, obviously across the moon surface don't have wind there, or do they? I don't know. I'm not an astrologist or astronomist, definitely not an astrologist, but yeah, it has that powdery kind of, you can see the kind of silver moving about. You could see, you know, the grass, if the grass was silver and kind of iris like, it would be moving in this little soft breeze. So that's Lunar Dust from Mabelle or Rama, and that's for the breeze or the soft wind nymphs, the Aurore. Right. Next, kind of the nymphs of the sunset, Hesperids or whatever. Now these represent the sunset, that kind of that part of the evening when the sky's all orange and beautiful, everything's getting peaceful, the air is generally filled with a kind of the nectar of the flowers from the previous day, or it comes quite early in the winter time, etc, etc. And so it makes you think of a kind of reddy orange, beautiful explosion of colour in the sky. So it's a really obvious choice, and that's a Bouquet Encore from L'Orchestre Parfums. This is, now again, it's not a listed note, but it's like a dark orange blossom with the tuberose and the pepper are kind of the main things of it. It's just such a magnificently beautiful fragrance, really. It's an explosion of warmth and passion and that kind of colour. It's almost kaleidoscopic. I mean, some people say it smells purple. To me, it's that reddy orange. And I suppose it depends, well, on experience and how we smell things, doesn't it, really? But yes, I think it's a beautiful fragrance. It just is the sunset. Like I say, that pepper gives a warmth and a spice and a tingle like you kind of get with a beautiful sunset. So for the Hesperids, or the kind of sunset evening time nymphs, is Bouquet Encore for L'Orchestre de Parfums. Then next we have the mountains, more specifically the kind of like a plateaus, or the valleys and the green parts of a mountain, not necessarily the barren top, but that kind of green side. And they're important ones. One of the named nymphs that I'll be mentioning later on was one of these, but they were kind of always very beautiful, and obviously kept it green and beautiful and luscious. And what I've picked for the kind of mountain nymphs, if you like, is Polly from One Way Bridge. Now this is a kind of representation of New Zealand, which you see all these just green endless meadows and fields and mountains and hills and stuff like that, which is why it made me think of it being the perfect one. And it smells of all this greenery, green flowers, green lush grass, unusual things that are only found in New Zealand, little fruits that will grow on the side of these mountains with the unusual flowers. Well, they're not unusual, they're just unusual to me because, yeah, I live in the UK, and it's a representation to me of what New Zealand probably smells like out in the countryside, and I think it represents them nymphs perfectly. It's a gorgeous fragrance. So that's Polly from One Way Bridge for the Anunads, is it? Aloniads, the mountain nymph people. Okay. Next we have the forests, and that's the dryads. One of the names I can say very easily. Obviously the forests in Greece will be kind of not so moist as they are here, I imagine. Kind of these beautiful lush green places with, you know, olive trees and fig trees, and a kind of a certain sweetness about it. Now I don't think they have frankincense trees, but what I've gone for is Frånk from And Perfumes, and this is because it's what I imagine a Greek forest to smell like. It's predominantly there's a kind of lime going through it, and that mixing with the citrus brightness of the frankincense, and there's other things in there. I think there's citrus anyway. I don't think it's just lime, it's just, I perceive, mainly lime, and it's kind of sweet. It's got a kind of sweet greenness, not just from the citruses, you know, like a sweet grass, sweet leaves, all of that, and that kind of freshness. And I think it's a perfect representation in my mind of what a Greek forest would be like. There's no more to say about it, really. There isn't really a kind of smokiness about there. It does dry down to be kind of a more kind of creamy, not creamy like a full-on sandalwood, but that kind of smooth kind of woodiness. Not particularly lactonic or anything like that, but it's a beautiful one. So that's for the dryads, for the forest nymphs, is Frånk from And. Then there's the underworld nymphs. I kind of jump backwards and forwards is what I go for this. They're called lampards. Yeah, lampards, I think. Not lampards, not cocky little racist footballers, but lampards. And these apparently carried the torches, lit up the underworld for Hades. They assisted Hades, obviously looked after things and kept it all spick and span down there. And obviously important nymphs, not as, again, nothing malevolent or evil or anything like that. So what I've gone for them is Amouage's Interlude Woman, that is. Now this is it's just a massive cacophony of all sorts of things. I couldn't possibly list all the notes, but what I mainly smell is, I think it's a kind of immortelle, which is, I presume that is a Greek flower, isn't it, and got the name because it's a kind of everlasting one, isn't it, I presume. Kiwi, which is a kind of, I don't know if there's not kiwi listed, but it's this kind of it smells like kiwi, that's the top and bottom of it. A kind of honeyness, there's loads of darker flowers in there, there's incense, there's smoke, there's the kind of smooth honey feel. It's beautiful, but it is very dark and it is very mysterious, as well as being alluring and kind of a very attractive scent. But it is a kind of scent of the underworld, if you like. It would be mysterious and dark and smoky and have loads of dark, sweet, tempting things about it, wouldn't it? So for the lampads, the nymphs of the underworld is Interlude Woman from Amouage. So next is the next two are named nymphs. Probably the most famous and kind of powerful of the nymphs, I suppose, is Amphitrite. Is it Amphitrite? Who is Poseidon's wife. And obviously she's a sea nymph, and they do sea-like thing, you know. There's nymphs who look after the fish and all of that kind of jazz. But Amphitrite being Poseidon's wife, and that is a really important one. Poseidon, as we know, is a dodgy offender person, and the way he kind of seduced and married her was the usual kind of dodginess of some of these gods. But anyway, I imagine she's quite a dark but beautiful and kind of, how would you put the sea, calm and pretty, and but it has its dark, mysterious depth, doesn't it? So I've gone for one of the few kind of coastal, marine, sea-like fragrances that I love. It's discontinued, sadly, but that's from Calaj, and that's called Lilyn, which is this kind of coastal tuberose. It's all these beautiful tuberoses. It's not too heavy, it's not too bubblegummy. It's kind of like a greener tuberose with that soft coastal breeze running through it. There's other flowers and other stuff in there. There's a nice kind of muskiness, but it does make you think of someone beautiful from the sea. You know, would be quite like this, wouldn't they, really, if you think about it? And obviously tuberose is not a flower we often think of as a kind of sea breeze, but I presume there'll be tuberose flowers that grow by the sea, I would imagine. And that's what it is, that kind of sweetness, that delicacy, the kind of, there is a quite a touch of an indolic kind of floral feeling there. There's probably jasmine as well, but it's ultimately just a beautiful, slightly marine tuberose, which would suit the goddess of the sea. So for Amphitrite is Lilyn from Calaj Fragrances. Finally, I suppose, is the most famous of all the nymphs, the one whose name we probably know the best, and that's Echo, who pursued Narcissus and was spurned by Narcissus, wasn't she? The story of Echo is quite a famous one as well. Obviously with Zeus's philandering kind of, you know, dodgy ways, he used to go visit the mountain nymphs who we spoke about before, which were called Alunades, who Echo was one of them. And obviously Hera was a bit of was a complete victim blamer. Again, I don't like the way they're all made into jealous maniacs, but apparently Hera was, and she victim blamed particularly Echo, because she was beautiful and I suppose Zeus wanted her. By taking away her ability to speak, she could only repeat things that other people had said, and obviously Echo was quite a shallow lass by the end of it, obviously pursuing the king of the gods, and then pursuing a man she never knew and only seen from afar. She kind of stalked him for a bit. Narcissus, who she thought was a very beautiful, pretty man. Obviously she didn't know him very well because he was very vain, and he was an idiot. He only wanted someone who matched his beauty, and no woman could match his beauty or be good enough. But yeah, she fell in love with him apparently through her stalking and her loitering about in the bushes and observing him. But he rejected her, and she couldn't speak to him properly anyway when she eventually did, because all she could do was repeat the words back to him that he said. Obviously because he spurned her, he was punished by the nymphs to fall in love with his own reflection, and he withered away and died by the side of a river, and the kind of what was produced from that was the beautiful daffodil narcissus flower. And then for her, she kind of withered away and died miserably, and all that kind of remains of her is her echo, which is why we say it, which is why when we hear our voice back to us, it's echo speaking to us. But yeah, what have I picked for her? It is kind of a cool story, which I think this video needed. I've gone for Viole Nere, and that's kind of because it starts off as, it is a hopeful fragrance, but it starts off quite sad and tragic. It's about a violet flower growing through the earth from winter into spring, so it starts quite cold and dusty and what have you, which is the orris. It is quite chalky, and that kind of gives that impression of the barrenness. And then the orris sweetens a bit with the violet flower coming through, and the patchouli gets greener and moister, and the iris gets a little bit kind of sweeter and more fluffy, and the violet gets darker and sweeter, till you can imagine a kind of spring. And in a way, I think that's perfect for Echo, because it does represent that kind of sad emptiness of her. But then as she dies and then she turns to dust, because she was actually half human, which is why she's not immortal. Her dad was just a human who nymph mum fell in love with. Anyway, but it represents that kind of peace and that kind of hope, and that Echo is always with us for all eternity, and she's always speaking to us when we hear our voice back. So yeah, Viole Nere from Fusciuni, Fusciuni perfumes, and yeah, Viole Nere. I'm waffling, alright, you can tell I'm cold here. So yeah, that's the end. So yeah, I believe the video ended stronger than it begun. Wish I could give more stories like this. I probably will end up with a Greek myths video. I've already done the Odyssey. There's just so many, so fascinating. I could do the Olympian gods, couldn't I? I'd be interested in that. Whether anyone else is or not is by the by, isn't it? But not for a while. So this is my sort of character video of this month, because I haven't done one for a while, / spring video. I think they go together quite nicely, don't they? What about yourself anyway? How would you scent these nymphs? Are there any kind of... They're kind of related to fairies, aren't they, I suppose, in modern times. How would you scent a fairy stroke nymph? What are you wearing this spring? That's it. I'm half dead. Thanks for watching, folks. Bye.